Mm-hmm.
Has anybody ever heard of the Sacred Water Study by a Japanese scientist? I'm going to blank his name right now.
Is that where you talk negative and positive?
Yes, Dr. Masaru Emoto, correct. That's what I'm going to bring up as my second video. So, in light of the Flower of Life, has anybody heard of a YouTube series called Spirit Science?
Yes.
Yeah.
You might have it saved down there.
Okay. So that's actually the first video. It'll be from the Flower of Life. And unfortunately, because I need my phone for this, I'm not going to be able to do the live video on my Facebook, but that'll save us some time here.
I can have the one going here, and you can just save it because it's going straight to YouTube, and then you could just throw it right over.
Perfect. I don't know what I do with your laptop. Is there a... Oh, I hit the power button, I guess. There you go. All right, so I'm about to start in a second. I'm sorry, could you repeat what you said about the live video?
Oh, I have it going on.
Oh, on YouTube, already?
So you can, yeah.
Oh, perfect, thank you. All right, so I just want to thank everyone for coming here, taking the time to come join us on the first discussion. What I hope is a lot more. This is my first time presenting in sort of this capacity. I've done a few educational pieces. I own Flower City Roots Edible Landscaping. I educate kids in the 19th Ward in my neighborhood at Grow Green Rochester, where that is a community farm and educational space for the children of the Southwest Area Neighborhood Association, as well as any of their families. We have free events that we post on our Facebook. But this is kind of different for me. And I get really nervous. I have a lot of social anxiety. So I feel the best way to take pressure off myself and really connect with who's here is to have an open, guided discussion. So the first few ideas I want to talk about, one of my biggest mantras is that I don't want to build any followers. I don't want anybody to, take my word as my word. I want this to be a talking point where you go home and discuss it amongst yourself, amongst your friends, your family. And when I say yourself, I mean your inner dialogue as well, and see where that takes you. I've had a lot of ups and downs, and when I mentioned the Flower of Life before, that is kind of what guided me on that journey to speak, and it opened me up to a lot of questions. That was about 6 years ago, and I'm still asking questions. And now I want to be here in a capacity to share my questions and thoughts and hear what everybody else has. And it's actually really exciting that everybody kind of knows about the Flower of Life and Dr. Masaru Emoto. So the next talking point is everything that we do has a purpose, and it's hard to find the balance between conflicting thoughts about every step you take and getting anxious yourself, but also kind of lackadaisically going through the motions and not understanding the impacts that it may have of those around you. And something that always sticks with me when I'm starting to struggle with that is the seventh generation principle by the Native Americans. They say that in every decision, be it personal, governmental, or corporate, I don't know why that's in there. We must consider how, I actually took this from mollylarkin.com. So this is a little, the seventh generation is, and that principle was so important to the Native American cultures that it was codified in the Iroquois Peace. And to their knowledge, all the American and indigenous tribes throughout the world embraced this teaching. Those of us that descended from European culture have generally in this country and throughout not had a chance to give it second thoughts. Mostly, I guess personally, our own environment. When we're still thinking largely about how to take care of the day-to-day, you're also not thinking about the minimal, about day-to-day, about what step you take and how that goes and how that transfers and how the energy goes throughout. One of the things I'm noticing in my own personal life is that when you fix something, be it physical or emotional, metaphysical, you've got to be careful that when you fix something, you don't create any barriers when the rubble falls. You got to pick that up, and you got to make sure that when the dust settles, you've got to kind of sweep that up as well. Because the more you clean it, the more wider impact it has. So you got to make sure that when that goes or falls upon, we try to clean that up. And you know, if anybody has questions about that later on, I'd love to talk about my own personal experiences with that. So the first video I want to get to is the Flower of Life video, and then after that, I'm hoping we can create a discussion amongst ourselves. How do I make the volume?
Volume's on the far right.
And if need be, oh, that might work actually.
And just boost it up to full screen.
And if anybody isn't here or can't see the screen right now, if you go to YouTube, it is Spirit Science. It is the 6th video in their series of, at this point, endless amounts. I can't even think off the top of my head how they have it. They're always updating more. So this is the 6th video on the Flower of Life.
Whether it's people, trees, cats, planets, solar systems, stars, you name it. Anything in the universe can be measured on a geometric scale. Everything in the universe is geometric. Whether it's people, trees, cats, planets, solar systems, stars, you name it. Anything in the universe can be measured on a geometric scale. Having said that, it's important to note that creation is also geometric. What we're going to be looking at today is the pattern of creation. Essentially what this means is that everything in the universe comes out of this single pattern. I'm not making this up. This single image will change everything. When I mentioned in lesson 5 that the ancient Egyptians and even more ancient civilizations knew about a deeper, basic understanding of the universe, this is the flower of life. And it is also the creation pattern of everything in existence. Even non-tangible things, emotions, thoughts, music in its entire spectrum, everything comes from this image. Okay, so there are 13 information systems that comes out of the flower of life. Today, I'm going to show you how physical reality can manifest itself, which is just one of the 13 systems. In future lessons, we will look at more. It's also important to note that at first it may not make sense. I ask that you do not choose immediately to shut this out, and just watch with an open mind, and try and see this in a new way. Also, I want to tell you that by learning about sacred geometry simply by observing, you are absorbing only a very minuscule amount of information. If you really want to learn more, you must begin to draw yourself. I kid you not, when you do this, you begin to see things in a new way. You begin to understand why things are done in the way that they are done. Promise. The flower of life was known around the world in ancient times. It was found in Ireland, Turkey, Israel, Egypt, China, Greece, Germany, India, and Iceland. It's also been recorded to have been found in England, Tibet, Japan, Sweden, Lapland, the Yucatan, and I think 14 other places. This thing is everywhere. Not only that, but everywhere around the world it has the same name, the flower of life. Now, to understand the flower of life, first we have to talk about how it's formed. This could get incredibly complex, so I'll try and keep it simple. Imagine consciousness, or spirit, floating in a void, which means it's nothingness, and then spirit. No physical body or mind, just spirit, and that's it. Then blackness, essentially nothing, all around the spirit, for infinite. Spirit decides to do something, so it expands its consciousness all around itself as far as it can go without moving. It creates a sphere around itself. This is the first circle in the flower of life. Then, spirit has an awareness of what's around itself in 360 degrees. It moves to the very edge of the sphere anywhere, and repeats what it did the first time. It creates this image, which also creates the Vesica Pisces. Within the Vesica Pisces is a vast and incredible amount of knowledge about width, depth, also roots of 2, 3, and 5, which are all numbers that go on forever. But even more interestingly comes geometric information about light. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, Spirit has no choice but to do it again. Spirit is flawless, and therefore it will move flawlessly, creating the next circle either here or here, exactly one radius away from the other circle next to it. Every time Spirit moves another sphere, more and more knowledge comes out of the image that is created. The first complete image to be formed is this. It has two names, the seed of life, or the Genesis pattern, and for good reason. Now, let's look at the book of Genesis for a second. Each of these movements, or creations of circles, can be seen as another day. On the first movement, the second sphere, it created knowledge about not only mathematical proportions, but light. The first sentence of Genesis says, the earth was without form and void, and that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. In the very next sentence, God says, let there be light. The key here is in the order. The movement happened first, then light happened immediately after. Well, but what about the waters? Well, you have to remember, the Bible has been changed over a lot. The ancient Egyptians would say that the way our modern Bibles begin creation is impossible, especially if you think about it from a physics point of view. Imagine a dark, infinite space that goes on forever and ever in all directions. You're just floating there with nothing. You can't really fall, but where would you fall to? From a purely physics or mathematical point of view, motion or kinetic energy is absolutely impossible in a void. You can't even rotate, because motion cannot become real unless there's one other object in the space around you. So the ancient Egyptians would say that before God moved upon the face of the waters, it would first have to create something to move relative to. So, Genesis pattern, after 3 spheres, you get the Holy Trinity. Another interesting one, it says in many Bibles of the world, not just the Christian Bible, that on the 4th day of Genesis, exactly 1/2 of creation was completed. Starting from the first motion, exactly 1/2 of the circles were formed on the 4th day. 5th day of Genesis, 6th circle, more information. And then on the 6th day, a geometric miracle takes place. The last circle forms a complete 6-petaled flower. This is what many earlier Bibles meant when they said, in the beginning there were 6. Our Bible even said creation was formed in 6 days, and this fits exactly. This is the pattern of Genesis, and so it's called the Genesis pattern. It's also the beginning of the creation of the universe that we live in. These original movements of spirit are really important, but now let's look at something even cooler. Another image that comes out of this pattern is this. It's called the Tree of Life. Many may recognize this as the Jewish or Hebrew Kabbalah, but the Kabbalah did not originate this image, and there's proof. The Tree of Life does not belong to any culture, not even the Egyptians, who carved the Tree of Life on 2 sets of 3 pillars at Karnak Temple, Luxor, over 5,000 years ago. It's outside any race or religion, as with all of these images. They are patterns that are intimately connected with nature. You'll also notice that every circle on the Tree of Life is either the length or width of the Vesica Pisces. The second image beyond Genesis in the Flower of Life is the Egg of Life. This is formed during the second vortex motion. Upon its completion, it creates an image like this, a 3-dimensional shape that you can hold in your hand. If you were to connect their centers, you would see a cube. So what? Who cares? Well, the ancient Egyptians did, because they were concerned with creation, life, and death. They called this cluster of spheres the Egg of Life. You probably won't believe me just yet, but this shape is the morphogenic structure that created your body. Your entire physical existence is dependent on the Egg of Life structure, and everything about you was created from that form. Everything from your eye color to how long your fingers are. This is a whole lesson on its own, so let's move on for now. All around the world, the Flower of Life was always made the exact same way. Forever. However, they always stopped after 19 circles. Why? Well, because they didn't want you to see what I'm about to show you. Back then, this image and knowledge was so sacred that they couldn't allow it to become common knowledge. It was appropriate at that time. However, now we can either use the information or fall further into darkness. In biology, all cells have a zona pellucida around the edge. These circles around the Flower of Life are the zona pellucida of the Flower of Life. You must remove these. Then, complete the spheres that were cut off by the zona pellucida. With one more step, you will have the secret. Finish the drawing, add the final missing circles, giving you this. This image is the fruit of life. This pattern of 13 circles is one of the holiest, most sacred forms in existence. It's called the fruit because it is the result, the fruit, from which the fabric of the details of the reality were created. Remember when we talked about male and female energy as a form? As you can see, this image is female. It has no straight lines. However, when you combine male lines with these female circles, something amazing happens. What you do is draw a straight line from the very center of every single circle to every other circle in this image. When you do this, you get an image which is known throughout the universe, everywhere, as Metatron's cube. It is one of the most important informational systems in the universe, one of the basic creation patterns in existence. So what is Metatron's cube? Well, anyone who has studied sacred geometry, or even regular geometry for that matter, knows that there are 5 unique shapes in the universe, and that they are crucial to understanding both regular and sacred geometry. They are called the Platonic solids. A Platonic solid has certain characteristics by definition. First of all of its faces are the same size. For example, a cube, the most well-known Platonic solid, has a square on every face, so all of its faces are the same size. Solids are all the same length. All edges of the cube are the same length. Third, it only has one size of interior angles between the faces. In the case of the cube, this angle is 90 degrees. And fourth, when put inside of a sphere, all of the points will touch the edge of the sphere perfectly. With that definition, there are only 4 shapes besides the cube that fit that description. So what are they? Well, we have the dodecahedron, the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the isosahedron, and the hexahedron. All of these shapes are found within Metatron's cube. This knowledge is also where original alchemy came from. The ancient alchemists and great souls like Pythagoras, father of Greece, considered each shape to have an elemental aspect to them. The tetrahedron was considered fire, the cube was earth, the octahedron was air, the isosahedron was water, and the dodecahedron was ether. Ether, also known as prana, and tachyon are the same thing. They extend anywhere and are accessible at any point in space, time, and dimension. This is the great secret of zero-point technology. The sphere is voidness. These 6 elements are the building blocks of the universe, and they create the universe. To summarize, this is the first informational system that comes out of the fruit of life through Metatron's cube. In alchemy, they rarely discuss ether. I've read that in the Pythagorean school, if you even uttered the word dodecahedron outside of the school, they would kill you on the spot. That's how sacred this shape was. 200 years later, when Plato was alive, he would discuss it, but only very carefully. This is because the dodecahedron is near the outer edge of your energy field, and is the highest form of consciousness. There's quite a bit more here, but I don't think I can go much further on it right now. Anyways, recognize this? The periodic table of elements? Every single element on this table has a geometric relation to one of these 5 shapes. Modern scholars ridiculed this idea until the 1980s, when Professor Robert Moon at the University of Chicago demonstrated that the entire periodic table of elements, literally everything in the physical world, is based on these same 5 forms. In fact, throughout modern physics, chemistry, and biology, the sacred geometric patterns of creation are being rediscovered. Another example is the egg of life that I showed you earlier. Hopefully that will help you to understand just how incredible and important of a discovery this truly is. Everything that modern science knows about the elements and reality are tied together through the Platonic solids, which come out of Metatron's cube, which is formed out of the fruit of life, which comes from the flower of life, which is made by spirit. Damn. Whether you're convinced yet or not, this is the missing piece of the puzzle. It all comes down to spirit. Don't forget, this is just one of 13 informational systems that created the universe. If you want to study this in depth in your own, the best resource I'm aware of is the book The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. Alright, I'm going to wrap up with something I think you'll enjoy. Do you believe in aliens? Even after...
So, I know that was quite a bit to take in, but the reason why I presented it is I'm hoping more or less to open discussion. I was kind of listening to everybody, how they were interacting with it, and I could hear some discussion. So I'm hoping to now bring that inner discussion amongst ourselves. But I just want to talk about, real quick,
what do you feel are the kind of the salient points of this that are the most important for us to take from that video?
Question everything. Not only that, what I talked about before the video is you got to be cognizant of kind of how you take every step you take. That relates to what you eat, what you think, what you tell yourself, what you speak about to others, and kind of the impact that it has. And for me, this video has helped me realize that the way I speak to myself, the way I conduct myself daily, especially in the garden, where I feed myself, it connects the mind, body, and soul. The way that you interact with the soil, really can change life around you, and I've noticed that, which brought me to Grow Green, which I mentioned, where I teach the community. I'm a volunteer manager. We actually end up giving out most of the produce, and I want the video, the base of the video is how it made me realize how I talk to myself changes how I interact with those around as well.
As well as talk how you speak to the plants that you grow, the earth that you're working, the people around you.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And, you know, there's another video about the water study. And I just want to bring these up as discussion points. So now I'd like, if anybody has any questions, to bring them up.
When I was learning about it, it kind of felt like it's like what we're inside. Reality is whatever is constructed out of, you know, the shape, you know, the holographic, whatever this is. It's like that's what we're inside, is that whole thing, however it's set up.
Right, and you know, a lot of information I feel that we get anywhere brings up different inner dialogue. So something you may have brought up, other people may not translate with at all, and I kind of, this is why I want to bring up the discussion, is to bring our inner minds to the surface. And I don't want anyone to believe any one thing that they see, that they hear. I want to create that discussion, and I keep questioning how things got started. So how it was said here with the seed of life. I no longer look to see how things are translated into today. I look at how it got started. If you look at the way it got started, the seed of it, you can see the rest of its journey. And if there's a problem with where you're at or a question, you can tend to find the answer by asking why more. So is anybody, do I need to play the video of the water study, or is everybody familiar with that?
Could you summarize the water study for us?
Yeah. So basically, in the video, if you look it up, the way you speak to water transmutates to the energy of it. And when he froze it in the freezer, it would create crystals. So certain words that he would say, I love you, it would form beautiful, picturesque crystals when he took the pictures. When he said negative things to the water, it would look murky. It wouldn't form any sort of crystals, and it just looked like, to me, air bubbles. He did another study with rice.
With rice, yeah.
So the study is one rice, he said positive things. One
This is
rice,
school children.
he
Was it
said
school children?
correct.
That, so they had rice on two bowls of rice, and as the kids came in to eat, they would say nice things to one bowl of rice, and they would say nasty things to the other bowl of rice. And the one that they said nasty things to,
There was a third,
oh, there's a third, okay.
and they completely ignored that one.
Oh, okay, good, so control.
Yeah, a control of ignoring, of negation.
Yeah.
So the ones that were spoken positive to by the school children fermented really beautifully, had a great biome to it, and it was really nutritious, in fact. And the ones that the children came in and spoke negatively to molded. It was inedible. You didn't want to open the dish to the environment. It was toxic. And then the third one that was forgotten about, it just sat there, and if you've ever hadn't washed rice out of a bowl and left some water in it, that's kind of how it looked, but months after. Same study as plants, same way you speak to plants. There's another study that's recently done with some more school children, and they were talking into this plant. It was behind a glass case, so students couldn't physically abuse it. They were treated physically the same. The only thing that was different was how they spoke to the plant. So one plant was yellow, was looking like it lacked nutrients. The other plant looked beautiful, and it didn't need anything extra. And again, just by the way you speak to it, changes the way it plants. And the base of what I'm getting at here is what we eat. A lot of the life that we interact with daily, our animals, nature around us, ourselves are made majority of water. So the way we speak to ourselves translates to the way we conduct ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And not only does our conduction of life create positive balance or negative balance, it creates ailments as well, imbalance. So if we talk to ourselves positively, not only release those ailments, but hopefully we're taking care of ourselves in a way, mind, body, and soul, with our food, eat, the way we exercise, the way we interact with our community around us, heals those ailments as well physically. But in my journey, the last couple of months, in fact, I've noticed the way I speak to myself, the way I wake up, and the way I go to bed, it's created all these ailments that I've learned to heal. But it's kind of opening up things that need to be talked about to myself. And I've had that discussion enough to where I've talked to those around me. Bless you. Which is what brought me here today. So I'm a huge gardener. I believe that food is medicine. Our medicine is our food. And the way we talk to our plants and the way we talk to our food, this is why a lot of cultures bless their food before and or after they eat, to give thanks for every step of the way. And I was going to have a discussion after the water video, but we've shorted that, which is great. So I'm hoping maybe we can have some discussion now. If anybody has some questions or talking points about their own life or how this resonates with themselves.
So I'll break the ice, and then you guys can go, just because I'm a chatty person. So this really resonates with me because everything you're describing is Buddhism. Obviously, I come from a different lens. This concept that everything is a complex series of causal conditions, that you are not just you're not just a human being all alone. You're a human being who exists within a whole system of other human beings. And you've had some that have nurtured you, some that have not been so nurturing. You've dealt with all sorts of environmental conditions and all of these things, and that's gone into creating what you are now. But the realization within Buddhism is that what you are now is the result of the causes and conditions around you. So we have to take responsibility in that. We have to treat every being as if they were ourselves. In Christianity, you might say that, am I my brother's keeper? Walk a mile in another man's shoes. This is Buddhism as well. In order for me to reach my highest potential, it's probably better if I help you reach your highest potential and my society reach its highest potential so that I can then reach my highest potential. So this resonates with me a great deal, and the idea of the energy that's put into something positive, focus and love and loving kindness and such is very dear to my heart. Our style of Buddhism uses mantra chanting as part of our chanting. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. I take refuge in the Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law. Our belief is that just the sound is meant to be a gift to all thinking and feeling beings everywhere. So if the resonated sound is in the area, then it helps to lift the area. We do it by walking through the inner city with drums, chanting, in order to put the energy out in the ground and in the people of the inner city to help them see their highest, better nature. So I totally dig what you're saying, man. So somebody else, this gentleman had one.
Oh, I was just gonna. I had a question about why they had the cell wall around the flower of life. Yeah, why did they cut it off? Why? Because you said when you break that open, you can see the rest of the picture. How come in almost all the pictures that we saw from different relics and things, it was always cut off in a circle? Do you have any idea of why that was, or?
I don't have any specific ideas to why, other than in my own studying of life itself and history and those around us. Knowledge is a really powerful thing. And if we understand yin and yang of life, a sentence full of knowledge can be really powerful, be it negative or positive. And as far as to the reason why some cultures or some people may have cut that off, is to ensure that knowledge to not get in the wrong hands. Is, you know, crazy as that sounds, I'll relate it quickly to myself. What I spoke earlier about breaking down barriers and the rubble and the dust, and making sure that when you do it, it's in positive intentions. In that sentence and in positive intentions, I'm noticing with myself, both what I do and what's done to me. Just because we have a positive intent, we've got to make sure that those who are consuming it is positive to them as well. And what I mean is, when we see someone struggle, trying to help the way we would help ourselves may not be the best for the other person. And if we push our journey on them too hard, it creates a barrier. Distance or tension. And again, relating that back to why it can be cut off. You know, it would, for the specific answer, it would have to be, you know, the person giving me the knowledge, which is why I don't want to create any followers, you know what I mean? I have social anxiety, so I'm struggling up here right now, to be honest. This is why I'm hoping more people start to talk. That's why I created an open discussion.
You're doing good.
Because when people are like asking me for knowledge, and what the best is the teacher, and the best teacher is the student. So when I go to teach a class and people start to rely on me for specific knowledge, it may not apply to you directly. If you love to grow tomatoes, like I own an edible landscaping business. If you love to grow tomatoes, but you've got a shade yard with some pine trees and black walnut, you're gonna have to grow those tomatoes inside. So you come in a tomato learning class, if you didn't know that knowledge from the beginning before you even came to take the class, if you learned how to apply the tomatoes to your yard and didn't have the full frame of what you're experiencing, I've given you the wrong knowledge. You've wasted your time, unfortunately. Now you've got knowledge for tomatoes, but if we have a second discussion, I can say, look, this is what happened. We can amend it around you, and that could look this way. Or we bring those tomatoes inside. Or we create a different garden inside and outside that can thrive there. You save your money, and then find your local farmer or gardener and support your farmer that way with their tomatoes. So you're saving money and implementing directly into your economy and your community and helping those around you. So I know this is a long-winded answer, but this is why I like to have this discussion, because I don't know when to stop.
So for me, I've never grown anything there. I've usually lived in the suburbs. Never really had it. Wegmans was usually the best option for me to go, having the time. I definitely get the meditative aspects, but how would one person get involved, at least with themselves? I can't think like socially or globally until I myself get my own crap together.
Mm-hmm.
How does one go about first understanding like where to start growing stuff? What's the best thing to do for the given times of seasons? What kind of, I know there's a lot of areas around Rochester where you really can't grow anything because of all the pollution that's come from Xerox, Kodak, or other places. How does one start to take all that in to improving? If they're already on this track of self-improvement, whether it's religion, whether it's their own inner personal growth work, how does one go about starting to bring that all in? Do you have any recommendations when that comes?
I do. My personal journey has made me ask that question a lot, which is what brought me here today, quite literally. This is one more step. And the second part of that is my journey also, I started a business in property maintenance, which I transformed to the edible landscaping. So
Mhm.
I don't want homeowners to just, renters, anybody to rely on me.
Right.
So to answer your question specifically, I tell anyone, make 2 lists. Make lists of what you like to eat the most and what you spend the most money on.
Okay.
And actually, now that I'm thinking about this, because we're here, we should create a 3rd list of what ails us, mentally, emotionally, physically. And to get back to your question, the first 2 lists are to find out what could be grown in your property, what could be grown inside. Any revolution starts and ends in the kitchen, because if we can't feed ourselves, we're not getting up out of bed. And if we know what we like to eat, we can find out, does it grow well inside? You find out how that food naturally grew in its best elements, and you try to replicate that the best you can. So you can grow things indoors, you can grow things on a patio, porch, outside. If you don't have the time or ability to, hopefully a neighbor has a garden you might be able to help out with. Ask them that way. Start discussing what they do, because it's their property, and it may be similar to yours. Ask friends and family the same thing. Start at home with yourself. So if you can't grow it indoor, outdoors where you are, find the next closest person you can do that with, and help them out. And then you trade knowledge, and you're growing food and medicine that way. And I say medicine because tomatoes are full of antioxidants. I grow anything purple or blue, it's full of, oh my gosh, I'm gonna blank on the name right now, but that color in nature actually fights cancer. So if you replicate the nature in which the food grows, I'm learning to work in what are called microclimates. And what's really making me understand that is something I'm studying in my own home, in aquaculture. So if a fish is stressed out, they're surviving in their own tank. You've got a filter, but it's that own environment. It's the same water and over, it's clean. But if a fish is stressed out, it's producing ammonia, which then affects the health of the other fish around it, which if go unnoticed, unfixed, the other fish around us. And on top of that, literally what I'm doing with my own home is one room is really hot. So that microclimate is tropical. It's really hot, really sunny. So in that room, it's going to have a tropical fish tank that will feed tropical plants, bananas, mangoes, literally.
Mhm.
Right next door to it gets the same amount of light. However, this room is always cold. So it's going to be a cold water pond with the animals and plants inside the tank of light to keep it healthy and replicate nature that way. And then grow lettuce and things on top in that microclimate. So you just, for me, my journey, my answer is find out how nature would have grown without you there and replicate that as best as you can. And what's really making me focus severely on that is the aquaculture, is why I brought it up. Because I want to implement as little technology as possible. I want to get either on solar for the electricity that I need for these plants and animals, or for the filter, I want to have a natural filter like it would in nature and have it mechanically pumped. So if I go on vacation, I don't need to teach somebody for 3 weeks how to take care of my fish. I can just go on vacation, or I can get sick, not worrying about things around me falling apart because it's relying on me, which is ties back to the whole, I don't want to build followers, I want to build leaders. So if this tank is leading itself, I don't have to do much. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
I know that was really long-winded.
I think so, yeah.
But you got to start as close as you can to yourself. And if you don't know anybody around you how to garden or anything, as you said, your local farmer, your local farmer's market.
I guess with some of that too, it's like with some of the areas around Rochester, it's really hard to, and I just discovered that after talking to a couple friends, it's hard to grow stuff on a certain property because some of the dirt is contaminated. Is there anything that, other than importing a whole bunch of dirt and soil that's not from Adirondacks or wherever, to know, like, census studies or whatever of what happened to the land and what is possibly able to grow or not grow?
Right.
What could be coming out of it? Do you have any?
So if you have time and ability to get your soil tested, you can find out what's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could shortcut that real quickly and do what's called bioremediation. So you can take mushrooms, you can take other plants and grow them on what are called brownfields. And it's called a brownfield because grass and things will grow there, but it's toxic. It's like living in a house, quite literally living in a house with lead paint. That toxic, that's never left the city. It's impossible to really take it out. So you can remediate the soil. So in my front apron, I'm gonna have a little remediation garden. It'd be one of my dreams to take over plots and remediate them and test them again. And once they're safe, you can now grow in that soil. If you own it and it's your property, and you've got time, you can use sunflowers, you can use specific mushrooms. I'm not going to be able to think of.
And those things, with that, will those help take whatever is in the soil out? So you
Correct.
can remove those out?
And the safe process with that then is you burn that. You incinerate it
Right.
at as hot as possible, as quick as ashes, and you keep, you wouldn't want to put it in your backyard fire is what I'm trying to say.
Right,
But if you burn that, it combines all of the toxic pieces of that, and then there are more proper ways to dispose of that ash after. So if you don't have the ability to do so, I'm trying to find people who can do things like this.
Wait, are you burning the cover crop after
Correct.
it's gone through its season?
Correct.
Oh.
So the reason why I'm doing it in my front apron is now I'm growing in my front yard. My family's been in the house for 60 years, so we know for the most part that it's pretty good and I feel safe eating it. And I want to use it as a ability to show people what you can do with your yard. I've got poultry now as well. And the reason that I'm going to use the sunflowers, they're going to be nice and tall, beautiful, won't really bother the neighbors, and it'll block any of the emissions of the passing by cars. And then either I will start a process in the fall to do it properly, or I will find somebody by then who can help me incinerate them and then dispose of them after. There are free services for testing your soil. I can connect people with that later on. I just don't have it off the top of my head. And there's ways to remediate your soil, protect your plants, protect your home, protect yourself, feed yourself, and heal the mind, body, and soul while getting in the garden. And the biggest reason I'm excited for the front yard is to meet my neighbors. I want to put up a little box, so anything I've got extra can go right out there. So anything I have extra or someone around me has extra, we put out to the community as well as through our community farm. We've got a blessing box there. And we just want to positively impact where we can. You could give things to shelters, but any given season, when we're overwhelmed with our brand new things, let's say from Christmas, I noticed a lot of people were happy to give things out, and shelters were unable to provide. So again, getting back to your question with a long-winded answer, get right out to those who need you the closest you can. And if we're all doing that, we're all taking care of ourselves, and we're living like the village we used to live in with our indigenous ancestors. And in one more little piece, I'm learning about what's called ethnobotany. And it's learning about how native plants were used by the indigenous villages and communities and families around them. And it's helping me connect myself to who I am. And we're using the farm as a space to have as many beds as possible for people to learn how to connect themselves. But because we're in such a melting pot in our communities, we can see how possible crops were grown in different areas, through different soils, and we want to repeat that. So anybody that has questions can come learn and educate themselves and ask us what we do to replicate those conditions. So the way I started was just asking as many questions I could, planting a seed, watching it grow, and just replicating the nature around it in as best a microclimate as possible. And again, if we don't have the ability to do so, we can help someone around us or support local farmers markets, which are great, because then you can discuss what you're consuming with who grew it. And for me, my filter is if I can't do that, unless I'm in a rush and in a pinch, it's generally something I'd like to come back to until I can have that discussion. Did I touch everything that you? Okay. Awesome. I know that was very long-winded, but the flower of life connects everything, and everything's connected, and that's how I can get so long-winded. Is anybody feeling like they want to say something?
What do you do about pests in the garden, or rabbits, or deer, or anything like that with
Taking them out. Right, right, and it's interesting, getting back to those barriers. So, for me personally, fencing. Fencing doesn't keep everything out. So for what I can't keep out, I grow extra and just feed. As long as they're not destroying things, I've got no problem. And for me, I think I followed that so much so over the last 6 years that raccoons and possum that come around the neighborhood. I just saw a skunk last night, actually. They don't really bother my chickens. They don't bother my compost. They don't bother the food that's growing. The squirrels that I have don't really do anything, and that's because I'm overfeeding. And if they are eating from the garden, I don't really notice, but I've got a bird feeder, so it feeds the squirrels. They're busy doing whatever because they've got their food ready accessible. Also keeps my chickens busy, and then they play around with each other, the chickens and the squirrels. So then I'm entertained and I'm laughing. And ironically, the possums and raccoon go to my neighbor's trash because that's what they've lived on for generations of their own family. And they would rather his trash than most of what I got. So they live in my yard and eat from it. He hates it, but he blames me. But they're eating his trash. So if his trash was cleaner, he wouldn't have to worry about it. I'm not blaming him or his lifestyle. But getting back to myself, I compost everything. I try to recycle everything. And getting back to the whole philosophy of barriers, we are now overwhelming recycling factories to the point where, like, they can't take it in anymore. So my efforts, I'm like, I'm recycling, and my trash goes out once a month, and my recycling goes out 4 times more than my trash. I'm like, oh, no, I'm getting more problems. So through this journey, everything's connected. I found out mealworms, compost, styrofoam, carbon positive compost, which you can add to your compost pile. Get rid of your own styrofoam. So if your life produces it by any means, I can't avoid it. Just can't. Until things around me change, I can't avoid it. So now people are giving me their styrofoam. They're like, I've got some styrofoam in my car I've been saving for you. I'm like, okay, cool. So then I bring it home and feed my mealworms. So then after my mealworms, isn't it?
Like what?
I just found this out like
What?
2 months ago.
That's a thing? Okay.
Bought them
cool.
from the fish store, and they started eating the styrofoam immediately.
Right.
So if anybody has Facebook, I post educational videos, photos, and events there. It's
Cool.
Flower City Roots Edible Landscaping. And there's one video where, I mean, I drop them and you can hear them going right at it.
Oh my God.
So, right, so I give them styrofoam and an apple every once in a while, or some grapes, just so they have water, a fibrous fruit,
Right.
so it doesn't rot.
Now keep them in a container?
In a glass container, because they like heat and they like light. So you can treat it like a fish tank. And then, this may answer your question, the compost is carbon positive. You can use that in your garden once it's been rotted down like you would chicken fertilizer. But the crazy thing is there have been scientific studies through several colleges, and I'm actually working with the U of R, so I'm hoping we're going to do our own eventually, that it's clean. Animals can eat it. They alchemize what the polystyrene in the styrofoam is made of, the oil, into clean carbon. So oil has always been here, hasn't, but as a food source. So until I get with U of R and work with some students who do that scientific study and I see the proof, I'm not going to feed them to my animals yet. But of the offspring, I can clean out their system through several generations and have my own compost pile clean of just what I've already grown. And then that I can feed to my chickens, my quail, the fish that I grow my tropical plants on. So everything.
Now, would it be possible for them on a larger scale to inject them into the dumps and stuff like that, break that down faster and more environmentally sound?
I would have to guess yes, because the other side of the coin on that is superworms from a different region of the world. They in fact prefer a different type of plastic. And they eat what the mealworms don't. So you can do hard plastic and you can do some plastic bags. So now you can do plastic bags and recycle. So whether things get banned and passed and people are happy or not about the current situation around us, we can take care of what we do. So we can use reusable bags. I have a terrible memory. Oftentimes I'm not using them as much as I would like to. And I feel guilty, and I've been honestly hoarding them until I can take them to Wegmans and they recycle them. But of the ones they don't accept, instead of hoarding them in my basement trying to figure out why and what's going on, now I've got the answer. And I'm feeding them to these superworms that I bought like a week ago. So I'm just trying to take care of what I do as best as I can without relying on anybody else, learning how to ask for help when I need it, and learning to identify how to help someone best when I can, whether it be the soil I'm walking on, the insects underneath a rock. Someone said the other day about their kid loves to pick up nature and bring it home, and he was picking up rocks, and he's got a bag full of rocks, and the only time the mother said no was because there were insects living underneath the rock, and she said, nope, that's all, put it back. And he said, okay, Mom, and put it right back. And I was like, whoa. Just because I let my daughter love her nature and bring it home, I'm sure now that she's not. Luckily, it was at her school with one of the parents, and she just made friends with this kid, and she saw him go, okay, and now we just implemented it that easily. And now I implemented it that easily around me because I don't want to affect lives around me negatively on purpose. And if it happens accidentally, we've got to find a way to communicate together to resolve it best for everyone around us. And just because we're having a discussion doesn't mean other people aren't hearing it and being affected by it and having their own questions, but then they're having their own discussions after, which is why I hope to have guided this in a way that we start talking to ourselves differently and see how, quite literally, believe it or not, integrate your own belief system, please. But everything's connected. Does anybody have any?
I think just observation tied to a question. In the beginning of the video, it talked about movement not happening in a void, which I think is a fascinating concept. And as I thought about that as the video was going on, you know, whether that movement is physical movement, emotional movement, whatever it is, it happens in relationship to something else. And that bowl of rice that the kids did not interact with, sort of with the bowl of rice existing in the void for me. And then the philosophy around, I don't get to unburden myself at the expense of someone else. Sometimes I have to carry it and live with it, because if it's going to cause somebody else a pain that's not okay for me, that's a personal belief. But I'm thinking as you're talking, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, I'm assuming you're not living in a subdivision in Pittsburgh.
No.
So my question is, as you've gone through this transformation around your home, what's been the positive and negative feedback from the people who live around you?
So to answer that quite directly, living in the house for 60 years, I live in the 19th ward. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that.
I just don't know how I'm in the 19th ward, so.
Okay, are you familiar with how connected it is?
Yes.
And the history behind
Yep.
it? Why? Okay, so then you know that it's got a lot of deep connection to the city, immigrants and refugees. One quick story about me, I'm on my father's side, 6 generations settled into the 19th ward. His family for generations lived there, and my house for 60, where now my daughter resides, and I moved in because of her. Looking at my house, there's a neighbor to the right and a neighbor to the left.
And I'm assuming they're relatively close.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so much so that my driveway is on the opposite side of my house.
Yep.
So I've, as you said, can't unburden other people or burden other people, unburdening myself. Because of my father's course of life, I used my neighbor's driveway to unload my groceries every once in a while. And me doing so didn't quite bother him until other parts of my life, my chickens, started to go over every once in a while and eat from his garden. To me, not a big deal. To him, a big deal. And just because it's not a big deal to me, I've got to honor his problem. So I try to remediate it. And because it's been going on, and it's not often, but it's enough, he has a problem with it. He used to be a cop. So I totally see and respect why he feels the way he does. Getting back to my father, I use a driveway because, well, I don't know any better. I was never told not to. So now having a conversation about my chickens with the neighbor, it's a huge burden. And listening to their conversation, because my father was home that day, he said, well, he also uses the driveway. So I'm like, bing, okay, now I'm never going to use a driveway again for any sort of purpose. And my father said the same thing. And to me, I said to him, I didn't know that it was a big deal. And he said, well, it's always been a big deal. And I'm like, how did I get told about this? So a neighbor who's in love with my family and my grandmother, I'm burdening and becoming a problem. That's an easy problem as long as I stop burdening him to fix. To the right of my house, there's, unbeknownst to my father, neighbors who had a severe problem with us, and through our cause of life have been burdening them, unbeknownst to us, until they literally start yelling at us. And I don't know
the gardening or
the gardening, the way I use a smoker for barbecue. Just my general life, my music, just who I am burdens them. And I don't know this until they're yelling at me, and I don't respond to yelling well. So I stop listening. Through course of events and learning about how I can be a burden, just living my life, I'm trying to unburden myself to those around me. So I take care of some of my neighbors, and then I think to myself, well, just because you've got a problem with them doesn't mean you can't take care of them as well. They're older. They're starting to need some help, and I'm starting to see it. So instead of doing anything but helping where I can. You know, I don't want to put myself on a pedestal here, but I started blowing their leaves every once in a while. Actually, once. Shoveled their sidewalk, which was their firefighters, and I didn't learn this until a week ago. So having their sidewalk clean was a major issue. And me shoveling my driveway burdened them because I'm putting my snow on their sidewalk that they don't use ever onto their sidewalk, but they're firefighters. I don't know this because we have not had a discussion. And I don't know how to honor them. So this year, I noticed things in life were getting worse for them. So instead of being rude, I had an extra 5 minutes because now I'm trying to take more time. I don't feel time is relevant as much as we think it is. So I'm trying to give more time of myself to others around me. And they've hated us for I don't know how long. More than my dad was 6 when he moved in, and he doesn't know why they've got a problem. So family is feeling negative about me, and I didn't know this. And because I was aware of what you said, I'm helping out the neighbor who dislikes me, and like literally the tides have changed within the month because a month ago when we had that last snowstorm is when I shoveled I did their whole driveway, and she found me on Facebook somehow. She's probably in her 70s, if not older. So I don't want to get ages, but I don't know how technologically inclined she is. And she found me, and I had a message in my inbox saying, thank you for that. I'm like, I'm still choked up about it because I could have done that sooner, and I wish I did. Now I'm burdening my neighbor on the other side, who's a family, you know, like, you really gotta be, everything that I said today is I teach from experience, and I don't want my downfalls to happen again. And if I see them around me, I want to learn how to help where I can, which is, I'm here today and so long-winded. But now I feel with your question, it's, for me, brought it full circle. So I hope to be able to do so with everybody moving forward. How are we on time?
It's 2:06.
Okay.
The other piece of that question is that I've heard that, you know, sort of negative. As your art has gone through a transformation, I'm assuming, what's been the positive feedback from around your neighbors?
Nothing yet, because I've been in my backyard the whole time.
Okay.
And to show you how my life can affect other people, the neighbor who used to be a cop, who's got a problem with my chickens, he goes, "You're not going to turn your whole front yard into a garden, are you?"
Thanks for the idea.
I had planted 4, and I was like, well, you know, it's not really going to affect you, and your grandchildren will benefit from this. So, yeah, actually, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I'm not going to do it to disturb you.
Right.
I'm going to be very conscious of my area around me. I'm not going to let it spill onto you. If there's, you know, a problem, I want to be open discussion, communication. You know, you don't have to yell at me, but every once in a while I understand that. So now that it's in the front yard, I'm hoping to have that little pantry out there. And now it's in the front yard, so I've got to do work out there. So I met somebody who wants to transform front yards. And she does not want to do backyards. And I want to work with anybody, and I want to help them get their goal done. I don't want them to follow me. I want to help them with theirs. And when she told me that specifically, it resonated with everything that I'm doing and the reason why I started this, which brought me to the greenhouse, which the same neighbor had a hand in helping the Southwest Area Neighborhood Association get their start, as well as several other of my neighbors around me, who I am now learning through taking care of them, who they are and how they're connected to a greenhouse that I was asked to be at, that I'm now community. And of course I'm gonna grow my front yard. I'm gonna give it to your, you know, grandchildren. I'm gonna give it to whoever wants it. And hopefully that brightens their day. And that's the only impact that I want is to make one more person smile. So there hasn't been that impact yet because I isolated myself in my backyard. I forced the neighbor on the right side, just through my own course of life, to build a picket fence. So my solution for my chickens on the other side was, I'll just throw up another picket fence. Like, you know, I didn't put up the one over here, but I can put up one here, and we can all succinctly live together. And I've heard comments here and there, and I don't know if they realize what they say, because it's just their inner dialogue coming out about certain things about how they don't like the garden. Or, you know, I grow sunflowers. Sunflowers. There's nothing I can do about this no matter what. But I was asked to stop feeding the birds because they go to the bathroom on his driveway. So the only thing I can do about it now is take more time, since I want to live from home, to wash his driveway. It's the only thing I can do. Take more time to correct something that burdened somebody else. Because that's the only reason I hear him complain. And I'm thinking these solutions as I'm talking to you right now. Like, I didn't think about this until we're speaking. Because he's literally like, well, I don't want a picket fence. I'm tired in my life. I'm going to vent a minute. I'm tired in my life trying to please other people, give them what they want, and then be told it's wrong. So I've had that happen so much that I'm realizing it's not other people. It's me. So lately, the last 6 months, I'm asking, what do I do? But people don't want to have that open dialogue with me, afraid of any which way I might react to it, instead of just breaking that barrier down, fixing the rubble, fixing the dust, and cleaning it all up after. I've created negative situations trying to give what they want. So I'm hoping eventually in the front yard it will have the impact, but the positive impact that I've seen is in fact at the greenhouse. And to give some speak about that, I started the edible landscaping business, and I was bored. I'll be honest, I cannot get bored. If I get bored, I get depressed. So I spent all my time in my garden when I would get home from work. And I thought to myself, well, everybody should have this ability in some capacity. And I, around the same time, because everything's connected, started changing the algorithm of my Facebook to get rid of things that no longer please me in the moment. And not just in the moment, but moving forward as well. Same way as if you see a tomato leaf losing nutrients, well, you're going to cut that leaf off next week so you could allow the energy of the plant to try and heal that, or you can just cut it off real quick, and the rest of the plant doesn't have to transfer its energy any which way because it's going to the rest of the plant. And so...
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Sorry, you just keyed in on a very astute point of the connection series, and how that relates to ourselves. So if we have some issue that we all know we have, and we're like, well, you know, I should really get healthier, or I should really do that, or I should really stop doing that. We could do it in 10 years when we're like, oh crap, it's too late. Or we could do it now and let our plant get to healing whatever it needs to be healing, you know, and go ahead and cut the leaf off.
Right, and every once in a while, it gets said that our thoughts are a seed. So we got to be careful what we're planting. We got to also be careful with what we're giving nutrients, what we're giving sunlight, what we're giving water, our actions, our thoughts, the way we speak and express ourselves. Changes what we grow. So to connect this to my garden, when I first started, it was my dad. He had peppers and tomatoes. Everything was growing great. And I came in and, unbeknownst to myself, took right over. and kind of disrupted the way he was growing things in the natural biome of life that he was growing things in there. And when I first learned about gardening, as I was like, you gotta till everything. Now I'm like, why in the world did I ever do that? And the reason is several. But you disrupt the insect, the nature, the life underneath the soil that we never interact with or see unless we get right into it ourselves. So now when I'm pulling weeds, I'm trying to identify, is it edible or medicinal? Is it native? Is it invasive? Can I use it? Or is it taking over where it's growing? So I do a cold compost, so I get a lot of volunteers, a lot of seeds that will just grow up. I let most of those go, and I barely, in my annual portion of my garden, I barely start seeds anymore because I'm just enjoying whatever comes up. I'm not tilling, I'm spending less work, and all the work that I would have to be doing to make sure that plant is taken care. Let me say it that way. I am taking care of the plant the way it needs always. I can't step out. So if we have a drought, if we have a flood, I made a huge barrier with myself instead of allowing nature to experience droughts, to experience its own flood. So I built trenches in my annual garden and I flood them. I let them dry out, and I learned through potting plants, don't water it until it's wilting. It doesn't need anything. So while I'm gardening so much outside, I'm just now only able to grow anything good inside other than like cacti and The only reason is because of the aquaculture, because nature's taking care of itself and I'm just like enjoying it. I would overwater plants. I would give it too much love, too much nutrients, too much fertilizer. I'm learning for my own self. It's kind of like codependency, if we're going to get deep with it. And I was codependent on my happiness, and I would try to replicate the happiness it gave me by watering it, and I was killing it. Same with my relationships around me, quite honestly.
Happens the same in Buddhism, honestly.
I'm sorry?
It happens the same in Buddhism, honestly. Whenever you come to a realization in meditation or something, you spend a lot of time chasing it, trying to recreate it, or it actually creates a division in your mind that I've achieved something that other people haven't achieved. And it's only after you let it go and realize that was as much an illusion as anything else that you realize, oh, we're all the same.
Right. And everything is connected.
Everything's connected.
Which, I do apologize for the lengthy video earlier, but that is, why I wanted to present it in such a way. I don't want to disrupt anybody's beliefs like I did my father's garden. What I should have done looking back is understand his vision. Even though my backyard is edible and medicinal, my story at this moment brought me to the landscaping, which 3 months later, I shared an organic farmers conference in Boca, and a month after that, I was actually asked to be a part of the greenhouse. So my journey discovered the right people because I finally started honoring my journey the best way that I could, and I just couldn't stop talking about it, and it brought me to the conference. It brought me to the person who actually lives here in town. And we started a relationship that day that I've been trying to start previously. And all my efforts of the edible landscaping have quite honestly gone into my volunteer time, relying on self and trying to get things done just for me. I want to take that knowledge, because I was bored in my garden. Like I said, if I get bored, I get depressed, and I realize not everybody has the time or the knowledge or some physical capacity or emotional capacity to get it done. Myself in the garden, I educated myself from the garden. Anybody could do that, not only in a garden, and I could help out where it need be, or anybody around them could, but you can apply those same philosophies to literally anything you do in life, because everything is connected. And if the revolution starts and ends in the kitchen, we've got to find a good way to feed ourselves, and one more portion about my life. I grew up catered to, fell in love with processed food, so much so that I can't have corn syrup in my diet, so much so that I have to think about what I'm eating all the time because I've taken it out of my diet so much that every once in a while I'm starting to realize I need to have it in my diet so that if I accidentally have something, I'm not having an allergic reaction to it, because that's basically what it is. I produce so much mucus, it's like a sinus infection almost. This is the first time, believe it or not, I had a sinus infection this week. First time I got sick this year. I didn't try to cut all sugar and diet out, but because of my current depression, I've been relying on processed foods more, and sugar more, and corn syrup more, and now my body is falling. And now I've got a sinus infection. I don't know if you hear it in me today, just because of my diet. And, you know, we got to also realize that when we put ourselves in a bubble, like I'm doing with the fish in the tank, that the bubble takes care of itself, and that our bubbles comb everybody else's, and they're able to take care of themselves, and we're able to help out where we can because of communication.
We're gonna start to wrap things up. So I wanted to really just get some comments from everybody and see what your thoughts are on these discussions. We've had several speakers. One of our speakers was on herbalism, and we had a farmer come and talk about the gut bacteria and garlic, different foods that can help improve not only the soil but your body. So it is all following a theme, and I'd like to just get some feedback so we know what other kind of classes we should bring in.
And what are some things that people might be interested in coming back for something? If any of you has someone that you feel kind of fits within this, we're always looking for new speakers. If any of you are possibly willing to speak, we're always looking for a new speaker. Again, it doesn't have to be about Buddhism or religion or anything like that. It's mind, body, spirit connectedness to whatever. We're going to have some of our previous speakers come back for a second speaker series for each of them. Rawson will be asking you again, of course. But we've got one that I'm going to request on the soil biome, on how to remediate the soil in your own yards with some of the stuff that we've had.
You mentioned mushrooms and the sunflowers, so maybe we could do a talk just on that if people want to learn how to specifically remediate soil.
Not many people know Rochester City is officially declared kind of a brown zone. So because of all of the chemicals that have been in the air and all of those sorts of things, including lead gasoline from back in the day, you have a car that idles in place, the lead gasoline affected the soil around the driveway, you know, so stuff like that. Sorry.
So any comments? Anybody that's not us?
You can always build an above ground garden if you want to avoid the local soil and put in your own soil stuff. And you can put like a plastic sheet in between the ground and stuff so you don't get contamination.
Yeah.
It'll help a little bit.
My wife uses 5-gallon bales.
I would love to see the relationship of this conversation to actually the aesthetic of the yard as well. Like, I would love to understand like what you're planting, what it's looking like as it's growing. I would think that would be a great conversation.
So I'll be real quick. My backyard is kind of like a mini farm, and the front I'm trying to do like a food forest to convey the two different possibilities that could be experienced anywhere. And a food forest uses permaculture techniques, but especially I'm like, plant where, how nice it looks.
Exactly.
So it's going to be ornamental in nature, but all edible and medicinal.
Love to see it.
So would you be willing to come back and do something just specifically on edible landscaping? I know that you do this for a living, but would you be willing to volunteer to do a free talk on how people can do it?
Of course.
Okay, so everyone should go to Facebook and like Shawayla and Coach Buddhist Temple. Because what we're doing.
Edibles, Flower City Roots.
Yes, Flower City Roots Edible Landscaping.
We'll post it as well.
And if anybody, well, I can just say there's also Grow Green Rochester where I can be connected as well. I guess I'll just plug myself for one quick second. I've also got Little Urban Farm where I make products of the herbs that I grow, and then I am Reiki level 2 certified, so I then can take those products with a free consultation and help it to connect your own mind, body, and soul to your own experiences in the world around you, which is Merkaba Holistic Healing. So I can be contacted in any of those ways for those specific reasons, which is why they're created.
Any comments on the mind-boggling nature of the universe?
Open the door to neighbors, to everybody, from reading your plants to when they're not doing well, to relationships with neighbors.
Yeah,
Say hello.
absolutely.
Just say hello.
Excellent.
That's what I
excellent.
took from your trials and tribulations with your neighbors, was that communication and dialogue.
And that's the biggest lesson I didn't learn for 28 years. And as key evidence between my two neighbors flip-flopping because of lack of communication and not communication, but effort, and then communication to repair the damage that was done, it can play a huge role in our inner being, our gut biome, which Kanyu always talks about, and how that connects to our lives, which is why I want those products to be able to connect your mind to your body, to then your soul.
Cool.
I was going to say also, positive communication, how you felt when your neighbor, gave you the compliment on Facebook. I mean, that we can always just sort of focus on the positive communication that we do instead of saying something negative to someone, being more positive. I think that goes a really long way in spreading more positive energy.
Yeah, I couldn't resonate with that more. And the thing that I'm also learning is just because we say things in a nice, light, airy tone doesn't mean it's receptive that way. So you've got to understand your audience, and it's hard to do for me an audience like this because I would much rather have an interpersonal conversation with you. But at the same time, in order to connect everybody, we've got to all be here together, which is why I'm hoping as this goes on, we communicate here, but maybe connect with each other, and then take what we learned out to every step.
Wonderful.
If nobody has any more comments or questions, we can stop the broadcast on YouTube, and that way maybe you're more comfortable if you just want to hang around and meet each other. It looks like he's got some books there and some things to show.
And one of the first things before we leave is if we could all give a round of applause for Ross. If any of you would like to see this talk or any of the previous talks, if you go to Flower City Sangha YouTube channel, there's our card, and the email address is how to spell it, but we have all of our talks on there right now, available free to the public.
Thank you.
That's